Hey, what's up guys, Lex again. Hope you're still having fun in Dawn of the Hunt, or if not, maybe in Last Epoch. I don't know, I've heard a lot of good things about that game, but I'm still full on in Path of Exile 2. I'm still having a lot of fun with this current flame tank build that I've been running. I'm starting to push the late end game and pinnacle bosses, etc. So keep an eye out for that updated build video. Anyways, this was a video idea that came to me based on some questions I was getting on some of my videos, both new and old. But also as I am playing, I realized I'm doing a lot of extra things that might look a little crazy to the untrained eye. However, this is not meant to be an ego boost or me trying to show off. This is simply to go over some of the techniques I've been using on my tank warriors over the course of my Path of Exile 2 career. And hopefully it'll help you optimize and get the most value out of some of the shield skills I talk about all the time, you know, like resonating shield, magma barrier, and shield charge. But as a quick note, I want to say as a bit of a disclaimer that I'm obviously not going to catch everything, and I wanted to open the comments section of this video up as a bit of an open forum for you guys to also mention to me what kind of shield skill techniques that you've been using to optimize your gameplay as well. Not for me to just, you know, steal some ideas. Kidding. I mean, unless they're really good. So without further delay, let's get into some of the advanced techniques you can utilize for your own shield warrior gameplay, starting with resonating shield. Alright, this is going to be a bit of a shorter section, but resonating shield can actually hit much faster if you are starting the channel again each time the shockwave occurs, rather than just holding down the mouse button and channeling continuously. I said mouse button, but you know, whatever hotkey you have it bound to, you know what I mean. Real quick, I'll turn on my input overlays just to demonstrate. You can see that this is the speed I am channeling resonating shield with my current setup without interruption. Honestly, it's a bit slow for a one-hander since I have so many reduced attack speed nodes in the passive skill tree. But if we interrupt the channel and start a new one each time we see a shockwave, you can see that, yeah, this is a lot faster already without even having to examine that closely. This is just way more raw DPS. Support gems aside, this is because we're skipping the backswing portion of the shockwave. Like, that's a pretty lengthy recoil animation that plays after each shockwave if you are channeling this continuously. And we're basically just skipping that by starting a new channel each time. So this is a pretty noticeable benefit if you are focusing on the hit damage of this skill and the on-hit effects of it. Obviously the innate armor break, but as well as any support gems you have it socketed with. I often have mine socketed with Rage and Overpower, and these two gems are going to do so much more work if you are using the animation cancel rather than just holding down the hotkey. Obviously, there are certain channeling support gems that won't pair well with this style of, you know, interrupting the channel over and over again, like Burgeon, but overall, I'm not usually channeling for very long anyway. I tend to be semi-spamming it because I'm trying to get Magma Barrier procs to go off, so for me, this is a pretty cool discovery. I don't think this is that uncommon, though, as some of you have mentioned this technique in the comments before, but I just wanted to put it in video form, so yeah, here it is. Oh, and real quick, just as a side note for Smith of Katava warriors, this skill can actually be empowered by Temper Weapon, which is interesting since resonating shield's damage mostly scales off of your shield's armor rating, but Temper Weapon's damage actually scales with your main hand weapon stats, so you can kind of double dip damage scaling in a way here. Also, I'm pretty sure, and I think the visuals might be bugged a little bit on my end, but the entire shockwave of resonating shield actually applies the Temper Weapon damage and explosion effect, so honestly a pretty potent combo. But alright, that's all I gotta say about resonating shield. Let's get to the next skill. Alright, so as a lot of you know, I use Magma Barrier in almost all of my builds. For good reason though, it hits really hard just by virtue of the damage scaling. Though they nerfed it from being stupid one-shot pinnacle bosses overpowered in the most recent patch, it still hits really hard, and it's worth knowing how it works. So for starters, Magma Barrier has a half-second active window that activates as soon as you use Raise Shield, Shield Charge, or Resonating Shield. This active window starts pretty much as soon as you hit the hotkey for those mentioned skills, but you can extend this duration by improving the quality of the Spirit Gem with Gem Cutter's Prisms, up to 3/4 of a second instead. Regardless, for Magma Barrier to trigger and deal its Frontal Cone AoE attack, an enemy must hit you with a blockable attack while that window is active. A half second is not a lot of time, so you have to be pretty accurate with your timing, essentially using one of those previously mentioned skills right when an enemy is about to hit you. And this timing takes a bit of getting used to, but if you successfully time it, obviously the attack goes off and you blast a bunch of magma out in front of you and gain an endurance charge. Pretty sweet. However, one thing to keep in mind is this part of the tooltip. Cannot perform a magma-infused block for 0.75 seconds after magma dissipates. So this basically means that if you miss your Magma Barrier window, in other words, no enemies hit you to trigger the splash damage, you now have to endure a 0.75 second cooldown before Magma Barrier will be active again. So if you are spamming Raise Shield or Resonating Shield or something and you miss the window, Magma Barrier isn't going to activate until 0.75 seconds go by, no matter how fast you are spamming those abilities. However, this is the more interesting part about the cooldown. If you do successfully trigger Magma Barrier with your first skill, they're just is no cooldown. As long as you keep timing your skills to activate Magma Barrier with enemy attacks over and over, you can use it as much and as frequently as you are getting hit. The cooldown will only activate if something does not trigger Magma Barrier, so this is something to keep in mind when clearing maps. Also, a few of you have commented that you've been having trouble getting Magma Barrier to trigger in the first place. Part of that is just going to be practice, just straight up. You gotta get used to the different timings and animations of mobs, but honestly, they're all pretty readable and predictable for the most part, so it doesn't take long. However, something a little extra that I do, and I'm honestly not trying to be flashy here, this is just something I found has been working for me, but I will often flick or zigzag the cursor to make Magma Barrier cover a wider angle while it is active. Here you can see I made the cursor bigger just so you guys can see this, but basically while Magma Barrier is active, I will face towards where I know attacks are coming from, but will zigzag the cursor a bit so that I am covering a wider cone in front of me. And I kid you not, this has led to noticeably more successful Magma Barrier triggers than before. I don't think I'm smoking anything. I'm pretty sure that this is how this works and is something I do to this day to make sure that Magma Barrier goes off more often. Though I find that with projectile attacks, I tend to run straight at the projectile without wiggling the mouse and just raising Magma Barrier or activating Magma Barrier at the right time. It tends to work better just because projectiles for some reason seem really easily missable, especially if you're moving. So I tend to run straight at them if that's what I'm relying on for a trigger. But other than that, I am zigzagging the mouse cursor all the time. But that's all I have to really say about Magma Barrier at this point. Hopefully you guys found that useful, especially you guys that are asking about how to get it to trigger. You know, I've tried to throw some information in there that would be useful to you specifically. But for now, let's talk about shield charge. So shield charge, the main player these days as far as damage goes with a shield, has a few things going on with it mechanically. Aside from using it to zoom from one end of a map to another, there are many points during its charge that you could, and at one point absolutely should, animation cancel. We'll start easy, and most of you are likely already aware of this, but we'll get it out of the way early. You can use the roll button to cancel the animation at any time, and I find this useful if I think I'm charging into a pack that I don't want to be in the middle of, or if you are just straight up accidentally charging in a direction you don't want to go. You can roll to cancel the charge at any time. Pretty simple. Again, I'm sure 99% of you know this already, you know, as the roll is a popular panic button and you've probably canceled a bad charge like this before. However, a more subtle way to animation cancel is at the very end of a charge, whether you collide with something or not. So if you don't collide with anything, your character will do this slowing down animation, which you should cancel because it locks you in place for a bit. This can just waste time essentially, and I usually just roll as soon as I feel like the charge is ending. You'll get a feel for the timing as you use the skill more and more. When it comes to colliding with a group of enemies, this is when the animation cancel at the end of a charge is probably most useful. The collision animation locks you in place if you don't cancel it, and even though it's not a ton of time, it is still enough to get you killed since you could be potentially standing still while some leftover enemies are able to attack you. So often I'll just roll back the way I came if it's a particularly large or dangerous group, just so I'm out of melee range of whatever is left. However, sometimes I'll also roll off to the side after the collision if I see a projectile or something coming my way. It's really good to make this a habit if you are using the skill a lot, because it will only optimize your gameplay and save you from some potential deaths. Even recently I died during an expedition to some runic monsters because I was lazy and didn't animation cancel one charge, and then I got stun locked and deleted because I stood still for that little bit of time. So in my opinion, shaving off any time when you are locked out of controlling your character, like during that shield charge collision animation, can only be beneficial to you. Just be aware that there is some jankiness to this animation canceling. Like sometimes you'll think you'll have the collision timing down and you'll start performing, you know, frame perfect dodge rolls to maximize your movement, but sometimes the collision doesn't go off as soon as you'd think it would on certain enemies, usually when they are using some kind of charge attack on you as well. Think about enemies like the Roas or those big guys with the shields, the Roly Boys, etc. It takes a little bit of extra time for the collision to register against enemies like these, so just be sure you aren't rolling too early or else you'll just cancel the collision and damage of shield charge entirely. Alright, one more thing I'll mention, we'll end it on an easy one. Similar to rolling slam, you can actually control the direction of your shield charge mid-charge if you're holding down the hotkey. I just wanted to mention this because I don't think it is listed on the tooltip of the ability anywhere in-game. But yeah, this can help you steer and charge around corners a bit if desired. You'll just charge towards wherever the cursor is on the screen if you are holding down the hotkey you have shield charge bound to. So basically move the cursor towards where you want to go and your shield charge will turn towards it. Also really useful for more accurate shield charges and just again saving time by zooming around obstacles in the map. Oh, and one more quick note about empowered attacks. This actually benefits from both temper weapon and infernal cry, so you can juice up a shield charge pretty nicely as a Smith of Kitava since these separate forms of empowers actually stack. which is awesome. Anyways, that's all I got for this one, guys. Shorter video on some of the habits, good or bad, that I have formed while using these shield skills over and over again. But please, again, share any interesting tech that you guys have come across in the comments section. I'm always trying to learn things and optimize my gameplay. I keep using the word tech like this is a fighting game or something. But yeah, that's going to be it. Keep an eye out for that updated build video soon, and I'll see you guys next time.